Hey guys, Adam with Fanuc here. Today I want to cover a topic that has been a source of confusion and conflict with programmers, and rightfully so, but it's the topic of joint versus Cartesian representation of robot positioning. When you're teaching your positions, do you use Cartesian? Do you use joint? When do you use them? Why do you use them? Does it affect the robot, etc.? So let's jump into the topic a little bit. Um, the first spoiler alert that I want to give you is it does not matter. Joint versus world is only a representation. It is literally to make a human's life easier. It is to help you as a programmer understand where the robot is, where it's articulating, and it does give you some flexibility over controlling how the robot articulates to get to a position. But beyond, some user advantages, the robot doesn't care. So this is a tool to make your life easier, not harder. So let's first take a quick look. You can see on my Teach pendant, if I just go to the position screen, pulls up a live position of my robot. As I move this guy around, you can see the positions changing in real time on the screen. Look at that, looking good. And let's start with joint, and then we'll work through to user and world and just answer a few common questions. So with joint representation, take a look at the information that you see on your screen. You see that it says joint. You see that it does take into consideration what tool is active. This is our tool frame. And it will also take into consideration all 6 axes. So let's play with those a little. I have this nice little joint jogging tool here in RoboGuide, where I can grab and manipulate these around. So let me grab J1, and you can see me swinging J1 around. As soon as I pick a spot, we can see this updating. So J1 facing forward means back of the robot is where the cables are. This is the rear. This is the forward. J1, 0 gets you facing forward. J2 is already at a 0, but this is J2, right? My second axis. We count the axes as we go away from the base. Get this guy better on your screen here. J3 is the elbow of the robot. You can see the range of motion of this robot's elbow. Each robot's a little different, but here's J3, and J3 0 will be right around here. I'm awfully close there. J4 on this robot rotates the wrist, the whole wrist assembly, it rotates. Okay, some robots, the whole forearm will move because the rotation point is back at the knuckle here, but this guy, it's up here. J5 is going to be wrist for wrist up, down or wrist up. Here it is at a 0. You can see the robot's mad because I'm putting it in singularity, but let's let him be mad. And then J6 is going to be my faceplate. I have a round tool, so you got to look at the plate itself to see it turning here. But if I had a gripper on here or something, this is how I would rotate the tooling around. So when you put everything at 0, this is known as the Fanuc salute, or the 0 mastering position. This is all zeros. You can see I'm really close to all zeros here. But let's look at it in world. Doesn't have anything to do with 0. Has absolutely no bearing on something being zeroed out at all. And that's because what it's doing is it's looking at where is my tool tip relative to the base of the robot. In world, we're looking at essentially the center line of J1 as it intersects with the center line of J2. To give you a better visual aid, let me see if I can get the robot here in RoboGuide. There we go. You see these dotted lines on your screen showing me my Z is at 156 up relative. It's 100 and, excuse me, 119. Sorry, 119. Dyslexia. Try it. Z 119 above the center line of J2 as it interacts with the center line of rotation at J1. So where's J1? Where's J2? That's the belly button of the robot. This is the core of our working envelope. So world coordinates are telling me where is my tool frame relative to the core of the robot. My tool frame, of course, being right now I've already programmed tool 2 as this tip. You can see the orb as my tool tip on this robot. The next bit is user. And in user, so we have joint, world, user. So in user, let me make user frame 1 active. Here we go, frame 1. You'll see the difference here. The only thing changing between world and user is at the top of your screen, frame. It just takes into account, am I talking the robot or the frame? I taught my user frame as the very corner of my table, or close to it, as lazily as I can. So if I move the robot over here, somewhere near my table's origin, look what my user looks like. Frame 1, tool 2, I'm at X 7 millimeters, Y is 9 millimeters, Z is almost nothing. Then yaw, pitch, and roll. You can think of these as these elements as the location, the orientation, and configuration. We got to talk about configuration next. So here the robot is at the corner of the table, living its best life. Everything's great. And then here comes Adam, gonna mess everything up. Watch what happens. Keep an eye on our teach pennant here. Configuration, N-U-T. I'm gonna talk about that for a quick second. These will have almost no bearing on your life as a human because you're not a robot. So don't waste your time trying to memorize them and learn them unless you just absolutely love, the pedantics of things. But this means flip or not flip, up or down, and then front or back of robot. If you had a SCARA, there would be one for left or right, which I talk about in my IR programmer tutorial series. But let's start messing with the configuration, as I'm telling you, as it pertains to a point in space. This robot, right now, I have it with the knuckle, the gearbox, facing inward, facing at the table. I'm going to grab J4. There we go. I'm going to grab J4, and I'm going to go 180 degrees out. See that? All I did was invert the whole wrist assembly to make it be upside down, which puts the gearbox on the outside, away from the table. And now I'm going to grab J5 and bring 5 back down. And would you look at that? I am right back exactly where I began, but look at the difference. F. Instead of a N-U-T, meaning not flipped, it's an F, F-U-T. And then I've got a number of counts too. These are turns. But what this is telling the robot is, hey, I still want to be at X, Y, Z, yaw, pitch, roll. I still want to be at this point in space, but I want the robot articulated differently. And maybe that comes from how your cables are routed, or your airlines, things like that. You want to be conscientious of that. But this robot can very easily get to that point with the knuckle out or the knuckle back. And the only way it knows the difference in a Cartesian world is with config data. Now let's look at this same situation in a joint world. You can see there's no such thing as configuration in joint world. That's because when we're looking at degrees of a servo, there's only one way for this robot to get here. It's looking at what degree is 1 at, what degree is 2 at, what degree is 3, what degree is 4, what degree is 5, and what degree is 6. Go there. There's no other way to do that. So look at J4 is at a neg 180. It knows I flipped it. If I were to send this guy back, now J4, neg 5, I can get it positive. There we go. Now J4 is at a 2. Bring my 5 back down. So you can see how joint representation, it could be argued that it simplifies it a little bit, right? There's 6 elements, and when you add up those 6 elements, there's only one place that robot can be. That's it. There's no disputing where that robot can be with those 6 elements. Whereas when you're playing around in World, if you only give me 6 elements, I could argue how that robot's there. I need those 6 elements plus the configuration to know where it is. So talking about that, what are some benefits? You might already kind of be thinking to yourself what some benefits of these are. And you can think of your own applications, but based on my user frames, my world, where is this robot? Is it being measured from the belly button of the robot? Is it being measured from the corner of my table? Is it being measured in degrees to get an articulation? Here's one example of where I always use joint. I like to make 0 programs to check my robot mastering. It's one of the first things I do whenever I get a brand new robot. I want to check the mastering. Maybe it hasn't been mastered. So I can teach a point. In fact, here, let me start from scratch so y'all can see it. Delete. Yep. So here's a blank program. I love to call them 0. I'm going to say, give me a point. Move joint fine, because I want to stop when I get there. I go here. Position. Now, by default, and you can change the defaults, but by default, a robot teaches its points in Cartesian. Why? Because that tends to be easier for humans. All right, humans are a little more spatially aware of where things are in millimeters, X, Y, Z, rather than I start throwing a bunch of angles at you and you have to figure out where that tooltip is. Yes, there's a system variable you can change so that the robot defaults to being joint instead, but let's just leave it like this. If I click the F5 key, representation, I can turn this to joint. Now, here's where that robot is in degrees, but I want to send this robot to my mastering position. Well, super easy. I'll just tell it to go to 0 of everything. Go to 0 in every direction. Here we go. Shift forward. I just put my robot at a true 0, Fanic salute, very, very easily. And if I were to go look at this point again, let me highlight this, position. If I were to look at this in Cartesian, this is absolutely worthless for a mastering. This is just telling me where in space that tooltip is relative to where's the base of the robot. So that's one example of using joint is getting that robot into a position that you need it to be in. Another question, this should be your first follow-up question, is Adam, do I need to use a joint command to go to a joint position? Nope, you don't. These are completely independent of each other. This tells the robot how to get there. You can do joint, linear, circular, arc. We even have spline. This just tells the robot how you need to get to the position that you taught, at what speed, and how you're going to stop moving when you get there. So, for example, let's take this guy. we'll do a quick little test. Let's send him down to this corner-ish. That looks good. And I will say shift touch up. So position has been recorded to P1. Let's take a look at what we've got. Joint representation, linear motion statement. So if I want, I can move this robot somewhere else and then do a shift forward. It's going to move linear to that point, even though that point is in representation of joint. So you do not need a joint move to move to you don't need a joint to move to joint, and you don't need a linear to move to Cartesian. You can certainly mix and match. The benefits come in from how you as a user want to manipulate this robot. I've seen it where people are picking and placing, and they get into a situation where the robot wants to take the fastest route somewhere, and it's fixing to rip cables out of their dress out. It's going to rip a hose to death. Well, how about you teach your first position and second position in joint, and then you can modify the degrees one at a time to force the hand of the robot. It's all about manipulating the motion the way that you want it. And again, if I go look at this, change it back to a Cartesian, you can see my information comes through right here. Not flipped, up versus down, front versus back, all those fun things. So I hope this settles some debates. Maybe it spurs some debates. Feel free to get something going in the comments, and let's see who likes joint better and who likes Cartesian better, and why and when and where. And let me know how you've used it. Where has it worked for you? Where has it bitten you? Because I think pretty much everyone has been bitten by wrapping up cables at some point. Just know that the difference between joint and Cartesian, it's here to help you, not to hurt you. It's to bring some clarity to where is that robot and where are you trying to put the robot. So I hope that gave you something to think about as you move forward. Please do some experimenting with it, and as always, have fun coding.